All right. Now, making sure you guys are awake. I know it's kind of cold and chilly outside, and that causes people to kind of bundle up. But the warmth of Yahweh's Spirit should actually wake us up right now and keep us. And hopefully, it's warm enough in here for you guys. So I'm just going to dive right in. I got 3 pages this time. I'm trying to actually narrow my studies down just a little bit because I keep going over the hour time frame, which is not a bad thing, but I do want to be respectful of everybody else's time that speak and not bogart all of the time and get you guys all bored. And so I have 3.
A bit more focused.
Yeah, be a bit more focused. I can get a little random and data dump on you guys, and I don't want to do that. Too much information is not always good information. But this, I don't, hopefully I'll be able to actually get to the second page because this is actually one of those topics that's on the surface we seem and think that it's pretty self-explanatory, but it's one of those things we have to dig down deep into and understand it and apply it because the adversaries actually pull a wool over a lot of people's eyes to say that they are not doing this when in actuality we might be. And so what is the thing that I'm talking about? I'll give you the title. The title is Be Not False Accusers or Slanderers. Be not false accusers or slanderers. And so if I ask the question, does anybody in this room think that they are a false accuser or slanderer? Everybody in this room will probably say, no, I am not. Right?
Not intentionally.
Not intentionally is a great answer. Because we think of being a false accuser and associate that with some sort of judicial process to where we stand before someone and actually give a witness or testimony, and that testimony is recorded. And if we do it falsely, then we're held to breaking the 9th commandment. But being a false accuser or a slanderer is much more about our daily lives as opposed to some judicial process. And that's what I really want to talk about now. Let's dive deep, and I'm going to give some examples so that you guys actually know what I'm talking about, because if you don't give examples of what this could mean when you're breaking the actual commandment, or when Paul says don't be a false accuser or slander, if you don't know what that really looks like as an example, how can you correct it in your life? And so hopefully I'll be able to do that. And that's why I say it's just because I have 3 pages, I don't even know if I'm going to get through this, because I'm hoping, and maybe you guys can give me some dialogue with this to make sure that I actually explain it correctly, because it is one of those hard topics to talk about. So let's turn to Titus 2:3. We've been turning to Titus for the past 6 months now, so we're just going to go straight there. Titus 2, verse 3. We're just going to read one verse here. And before we jump into what these actually are, define it and then explain it, I'm going to address the elephant in the room with a couple of verses. And there is an elephant sitting over in the corner right now, just waiting to disrupt this conversation. Not talking about you, no. But, and then as you talk about this conversation, there are bear traps and landmines that we will have to avoid that could distract us and take us off topic. And so I'm going to try to navigate all of that when we're talking about this subject. Because if you get distracted in this conversation, you will never get to the meat of the matter, so to speak. So be not a false accuser or slanderer. Titus 2:3 says, aged women likewise, and Titus is addressing the aged women after he addresses the elders or aged men. The aged women likewise, that they be in behavior as becoming or becometh holiness, not false accusers, not given to much wine, teachers of good things. And I'm going to stop right there. And so obviously I'm giving this verse because it says that the aged women should not be false accusers. So has anybody noticed the elephant in the room yet? All right, let's go to the next verse and maybe you're going to see it. 1 Timothy 3:11. 1 Timothy chapter 3, verse 11. 1 Timothy 3:11 says, even so much their wives. And he's talking to the deacons' wives. He's addressed the deacons and how they should behave, but he's addressing their wives right now. Even so much their wives be grave, not slanderers, sober, faithful in all things. Talking to the deacon wives. Don't be slanderers. And that's why I have this verse here, because we're talking about false accusers and slanderers. So has anybody picked up the elephant in the room yet? Amy's laughing. Huh?
Is it gossiping?
No.
That would be my thought too.
Yeah.
That by stopping the gossip, you'd be able to stop a whole lot of the slandering.
We're going to have the verse on that. Don't be a talebearer. But what I am trying to point out, the elephant in the room, is Paul seems to specifically be talking to women. And that is a trap. Because if we read in the Old Testament, which we're going to go to, the Old Testament Torah talks to everybody. But somehow, when Paul is addressing the churches, he is specifically calling out the women. The elephant in the room is, no, we should not only be accusing women of being false accusers or slanderers. Paul is talking to a group of people where he sees this happening, and he is specifically addressing that group of people. It's like if I walked in a room and I got a group of people on the left that's doing everything that they're supposed to be doing, and a group of people on the right that is not quite living up to what they're supposed to do. I'm going to address the group of people on the right? Just so happens in Paul's case, the people on the right are all women. And he's specifically addressing them. Not to say that these people on the left, if they happen to be all men, they can't fall in the same category of not doing something. Don't be false accuser. Don't be slanderers. It just happens he didn't need to address them because they were not doing it. When we look at Scripture holistically, nobody should do this. No man should sit up there and say, well, these verses Paul are talking about in Titus and Timothy, they're not talking about men, so therefore I can do it. That is ridiculous. Thank you, Curtis.
When Paul's letters written to the various people and various congregations, he's talking about a specific issue specific to them.
Right.
He's not painting a big broad thing that all women are talebearers. He's not saying that at all. It's a specific issue to that specific group.
Yeah, because it need to be addressed
And
with
it needs
them.
to be addressed.
Yeah.
There's a reason he said one thing in Ephesians and didn't mention it in Galatians and so forth.
Yeah. And if I think about it, he's talking to aged women, but he's just reaffirming what they're already doing, making sure that continues to be what they're doing. Mm-hmm. He's talking to the wives of the deacon, saying that I want to make sure that you don't do this because you're a representation of your husband. And he is not doing it because he wants to be a deacon, and he is doing everything he needs to do to be a deacon. And so, but if any of those men decided to be a false accuser or slanderer, they would be violating the law. So, elephant has been addressed. Are we good? All right, now we can move forward and try to avoid all these landmines and trapdoors. All right, so the fact that Paul addresses the women in the churches and tells them not to be false accusers and slanderers does not only relegate this requirement to women. The example and reason being is just like Curtis just said, he was addressing certain things. I think it's in Corinthians when he addressed that they were doing a sin that hadn't been done anywhere else, where one would have his father's wife. Now, was he specifically saying only these men at this church should not have their father's wife? No, he's addressing them because he's talking to them, and therefore nobody should do that sin. It is a sin. It is a violation of the law. And so those are the two contrasts of age and sexism is not playing in a part in what Paul is saying, but that is what's attributed to what he's saying so that people can avoid the conversation. Got to stay out of those bear traps. All right, so I regress. Let's talk about false accusers and slanderers. So obviously we have to define the two. So let's define what is a false accuser. False accuser is someone making a charge or claim of wrongdoing about another person that is not true. Key here, it is not true. It's false. You accuse them of something that is not true. This is different from a third party telling you something which is not true, and you're saying it because you heard it from another person. You don't know it's not true, but you repeat it anyway. That is a slanderer. Yes.
One thing I've learned is that even if a thing is true, if you're speaking ill of another, you're on very shaky ground.
Hold that. We're going to get to that one. And that's a good one. If you speak ill towards another person, even though it is true, you have to have another witness. And Scripture actually talks about that. Yes. Now, you can address it with them directly because they are doing wrong and you're supposed to hold them accountable. But you can't tell nobody else unless there's one or two or more witnesses. We're going to get into that. Thank you for bringing that up. Like I said, I got a lot of stuff I got to pack into one little and hopefully one study, and hopefully I can get to it all. So backing up, false accusers, you're actually making claims or charge to someone on something that's not true, which is different if you hear it from someone and it's not true and you repeat it. You don't know that it's not true, but you say it anywhere. It's not so much falsely accusing them, but you are slandering them, which is the next. Slander is one who slanders or defames the name or reputation of another person. One who slanders or defames the name of another person, whether knowingly or unknowingly. You say something about someone that actually makes another person see them in a different light. So I want us to think about those two things. Because, like I said earlier, a lot of times we look at Exodus 20:16, the ninth commandment, where it says, "Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor," and we don't look to apply that into our daily lives and how we could be breaking that commandment and not even know it. Because the adversary, his job is to deceive you into doing something, sinning, and not even know that you're sinning. And everybody agree with that? That is modus of operandi, if that's how you say that. If he can deceive you to do something that's a sin, and you don't even know it's a sin, he's achieved his goal. All right, so I am going to give two examples of a false accuser or a slanderer, and hopefully these are all fictional. None of these are true. But these are examples. And this is how I understand it in my mind. This is how I wrap my mind around this topic. The first example I call the mall conflict. We all go to a mall, bunch of people walking around. I call it the mall conflict. Let's just say I'm walking in the mall and a person bumps up against me. And I say, "Oh, hey man, I'm sorry." And he turns around and says, "Watch where you're going." I'm like, oh, buddy, let's keep this peaceable. Sorry, I didn't see you. Well, you need to watch where you're going. And then he pushes me. And I'm like, hey, wait a minute, man. You can't do that. Luckily, mall cop is walking by. And so security, you guys, what's going on? Break it up. Hey, we just bumped into each other. I said, I'm sorry, but my man has a problem. The mall cop says, all right, let's squash this. You go your way, you go your way. He walks off, I walk off. Done deal. So I tell somebody this story, and they tell somebody this story. And they tell another person this story that goes to church with me. But by the time this third person hear the story, this is the story they get. Hey, you hear about David almost went to jail? What? Yeah, he got into a fight in the mall with some random guy. For real? Yeah, he was walking down the mall and guy bumped into him, so he pushed the guy And then they start fighting, and security had to break them up, and the police was called in, and they were about to take both of them to jail. What? Yeah, I'm for real, man. Now, you guys tell me what's wrong with that picture.
Sounds like something out of Tombstone.
Yeah, sounds like something out of Tombstone, but seriously, what is wrong with that story?
There's a lot of detail that just didn't happen in that story.
So if it's not true,
It's false.
it's false. And so if it's not true and you've accused somebody of something false, you are a false accuser. And if that interaction caused that person to be defamed, meaning their character is now in question, they have been slandered also. I see how you guys are looking at me. You're wrapping your head around it, right? Because you telling that story about me that's not true causes people to say, well, David, he speaks at his church and he got into a fight. Scripture says we're not supposed to be brawlers. Scripture says we're supposed to be peaceable with everybody. Nothing in Scripture adds up to what David did. So David is a hypocrite. And you guys are like looking at me like, well, do people really come to those type of conclusions? Absolutely. Everybody is looking to knock a person down, especially if they're standing up here. Yes,
Well,
Tony.
in your story, the mall police came in, but what if they didn't come in?
Yeah, if they didn't come in, if I'm living by Scripture and those things that I just quoted, it would have not escalated. No how, no way. If it was me and if it was true. But the point behind the story is we always rely on, well, somebody else told me if it wasn't true, then, it's not my fault. Or I'm just repeating what I heard, so I didn't slander anybody. Somebody else told me and they were slandering them. But you repeated it. So where I'm going to skip to the end on this. If you didn't see it, you shouldn't speak it. If you can't validate it's true, you shouldn't repeat it. And if you and another person didn't witness it, you shouldn't tell anybody. That's stuff that you keep to yourself, almost like a secret. And if you want to, you can address it with the person that it happened to, but you can't say it to anybody else if there's not more than 2 or 3 witnesses to establish a thing. And that's how we stop being false accusers and slanderers. Yes, Curtis.
Don't believe everything you hear. I mean, that.
Don't believe everything you hear.
It's a lack of wisdom.
Right. It is a lack of wisdom, and I got
Lack
some
of
verses
discernment,
saying
lack
that
of wisdom.
Proverbs call people fools that do
Yes.
that. We don't want to stand in that. So, did I navigate that bear trap? I guess not. All right, so I'm going to give another example because that one is quite complicated. So I'm going to try to give an easier example of how we can avoid to be false accusers or slanderers. And the reason why I'm giving these examples is because this is stuff that can happen today and we have probably seen happen. I know I have. And we don't think anything about it when it's happening, but when in actuality, we will be held accountable for it. All right, so we got the mall conflict out of the way. Any questions about the mall conflict? Any comments about it?
Just brings to mind every idle word will be counted.
That is the next scripture I got after this one. Matthew 12:36. I'm going to get there. I want to talk to you guys about, I call the striped shirt incident. The striped shirt incident. Again, these are all fictional. I'm just trying to come up with some examples. Not true. Say I'm here, somebody comes in, they have this new shirt on, and it's striped. And they're like, hey man, what do you think of my new striped shirt? I respond back, I don't like stripes. Okay, and the person walks off. I said I don't like stripes, but what did that person hear? I don't like your shirt, right? So that person goes to another person in church. I went to David, man, and asked him about my shirt, and he said he didn't like my shirt. What do you think? And that person, man, that's a gorgeous shirt. I don't know what's wrong with David. Yeah, right? David is just really insensitive, man. He just doesn't care about people's feelings, does he? Doesn't feel vindicated, so they go to the next person. You know, I went to David and asked him about this shirt, and he said he didn't like it. What do you think about this shirt? That's a nice shirt, dude. Yeah, right? What is wrong with David? How dare he not like this shirt? And they go to another person and another person. So everybody's looking at David sideways the rest of the day like, man, how dare you? Why did you not like that person's shirt? But nobody in the situation knows that the reason David doesn't like that shirt is because when David was younger, he got into a terrible car accident and he got placed in the hospital. And when he had that car accident, he had a striped shirt on. And that striped shirt and the blood that he saw on that shirt that was his own blood impacted him so bad that he would never wear a striped shirt again. And so fast forward, when he saw the striped shirt, what was David thinking in his head? I almost died, and my blood was all over the striped shirt that I had on. His dislike for a striped shirt has nothing to do with the shirt that that person had on. But his response was a knee-jerk response of, I don't like striped shirts. But nobody asked him why. And so for months and months, the congregation is against David because he doesn't like striped shirts. So where in this story is the wrong?
They misrepresented what David said.
Thank you. They slandered David. They falsely accused David for not liking that person's shirt, for being insensitive, for basically not being a brother. When in actuality, that was not the situation. Now the question is, will that person be held accountable for what they did and what they said? Absolutely. Matthew 12:36. And we will just mention to that. And then you're going to have to turn one verse. We know what this verse says. Once I read it, you're going to be like, oh, okay, I see. Matthew 12:36 says, but I say unto you, and this is Yeshua talking, that every idle word that man shall speak, they shall give account thereof in the day of judgment. Every idle word. Verse 37 goes on to say, for by the words that thou shalt be justified, and by thy words thou shalt be condemned. Our words are very, very important. Communication in this story instance is very, very important. Because all of this would have been squashed if that person was like, you don't like my shirt? Why? That one little word would have solved all of that and prevented everything from happening thereafter. Why? Because then David would have said, well, man, when I was younger, I had an accident. I almost died. I was wearing a striped shirt. And all I can remember in my head was blood all over that striped shirt. And it actually keeps me up at night. And every time I see a striped shirt, I get a little thing about me and I get emotional. In that situation with that person, we made, David don't like my striped shirt. Can you believe that? No, they would be like, man, I'm so sorry. I feel for you. You need a hug? Yes, David.
Yeah, and this is this is part of the discourse in reply to verse 24 was where he was accused. The Pharisees said, "This fellow does not cast out demons except by Beelzebub, the ruler of the demons."
Yes, falsely accusing him of doing something on the basis of the adversary as opposed to Yahweh's spirit. And that's blaspheming the seventh part spirit. That's a whole nother situation. But yeah, falsely accusing someone and slandering someone is just as easy as a misunderstanding. It is our job to know and identify and acknowledge when we are doing it and stop it. And that's why I'm going to say repeatedly that the best way to do that is to not say nothing. I know we come here, like we came here today, the first thing we did is we got together and we start talking to each other. Hadn't seen each other all week, and we want to talk and communicate and congregate and fellowship and all that stuff. But still, everything doesn't have to be shared. Everything doesn't have to be mentioned just to have idle conversation. Because that idle conversation is where the bear trap lies. And if we don't watch it, we're going to stand before Messiah's judgment seat, and he's going to be like, well, what about when you did this? And he's going to be asking these questions, not me. Was that right? What about when you said this about this person? Was that right? What about when you did this? Was that right? And we're not going to be able to say, well, I didn't know that was false. Somebody told it to me. Was it right for you to repeat it? And last thing, we want to be standing there with our mouth open and not being able to say anything. The adversary has blinded us to not realizing when we're acting like the rest of the world, because that's what the rest of the world does. They're talebearers, they're false accusers, they're slanderers. They go about being busybodies. If we're going to be set apart, if we're going to be peculiar people, if we're going to be different, being able to show everybody else the light of Messiah, which is in us, should we be doing that? And the answer is absolutely not. Let's go to Exodus 23:1. Exodus 23:1. Any questions about the examples? Again, those are fictional stories. They never happened. So I want you guys thinking about who had the striped shirt on. It's not true. It's just examples that I could think of. There are many more. But I gave two examples of one to where third party told you something that wasn't true. And if you repeated it and it wasn't true, you've done both false accusing and slanders, a direct response that was actually misunderstood, that was actually told to someone else, going back to what was said. No one but you saw it, but you began falsely accusing and slandering the person because you really just didn't understand what they were saying and why they said it. Both situations could cause you to be in trouble with Yahweh. All right, Exodus 23:1. I mentioned earlier that in our mind we have this preconceived notion that bearing false witness or giving a false report can only be done in a courtroom of law or something like that. Exodus 23:1 says, "Thou shalt not raise a false report. Put not thine hand with the wicked to be an unrighteous witness." Like I said, the world, they do that. We should not do that. It says, "Thou shalt not follow the multitude to do evil. Neither shalt thou speak in a cause to decline after many that wrest judgment." And that last verse is basically saying evil people and the multitude of evil will actually give a false report and won't think anything of it. And we should definitely not do it to cause someone else to pass judgment on someone. And in actuality, the world really does that on purpose, and we call those influencers. They will say something bad about somebody to gain this community of people to be against that person. And what they're saying may not be true. Cancel culture. I almost couldn't get that out. Cancel culture. They drum up all of this stuff about people. Half of it's not true. They gain this support. All of us are going to be against that person. They're passing judgment on that person from what somebody else said. We definitely should not be doing that. And the best way to stay away from that is just to abstain from all evil, all appearances of evil.
That would include all of politics, right?
All of politics and everything online. Yes.
Politics, all false accusations.
All false accusations. So that doesn't leave a lot left, right? Yeah. But we think of this as not being anything that's wrong. There's nothing wrong with that. You're walking a tightrope there. You're literally walking through a minefield with no indicators. Because if you step on the wrong place, you're going to blow up. And you don't even know it. If you cannot confirm that something is true, if you didn't see it yourself, if you don't have 2 or 3 witnesses, you shouldn't say anything about it. And definitely shouldn't be saying it to people to cause them to pass judgment on others for your cause and to support what you believe. And I'll say that again. You shouldn't be saying it about people to gain support, causing them to pass judgment so that they will be a part of your cause and your belief. Most are under the delusion that bearing false witness means to be standing in front of a judge with your Bible in your hand, with your hand on it, saying that you will tell the truth. And that's the only way you will break the 9th commandment. Where do we get this actual perception from? Let's turn to Deuteronomy 19:15. Deuteronomy 19:15. I told you guys I had a lot of stuff because I haven't even gotten off the first page yet. Oh well, we'll get there. Deuteronomy 19:15. And this is Moses was given how we should conduct each other, and we just talked about this earlier when it comes to a witness. Deuteronomy 19:15 says, "One witness shall not rise up against a man for an iniquity, or for any sin, and any sin that he sinneth." And I stop there. One witness cannot rise up. And then we just talked about, well, what about you're supposed to tell them when they're doing wrong? The term rise up here is meaning to go to other people and tell them. You can go to that person. But if you're the only one that saw it, it's between you two. You don't rise up and bring other people into the conversation, and especially not so that they can pass judgment on that person and support your cause to come against them. Let's keep reading. "At the mouth of 2 witnesses or at the mouth of 3 witnesses shall a matter be established." You cannot be the only one that saw it if you want to rise up or bring other people involved. Someone has to validate or corroborate your story. Verse 16, "If a false witness rises up against any man to testify against him that which is wrong, then both the men between whom the controversy is shall stand before Yahweh, before the priest and the judge, which shall be in those days, and the judges shall make diligent inquisitions. And behold, if the witness be false witness or a false witness, and hath testified falsely against his brother, then shall ye do unto him as he had thought to have done unto his brother. So shalt thou be, or put the evil away from among you. And those which remain shall hear and fear, and shall henceforth commit no more any such evil among you." And that's what we associate bearing false witness with. I didn't stand before a judge. I didn't stand before the priest and condemn a person falsely. So therefore, I didn't break the 9th commandment. I didn't bear false witness. I've never done that. And that would be true. But in this situation, what we're talking about in the examples that I just gave, If you bear false witness and slander someone idly through conversation, who are you standing before? Yahweh.
Yahweh, whether you realize it or not.
Whether you realize it or not, he's always there, ever present. And everything you say is being recorded. So you've missed the first point here. They shall stand before Yahweh, the priest and the judge. Just because the priest and the judge is not there does not mean that you are not breaking the 9th commandment. If you do it, you're doing it before Yahweh.
But who's the high priest today?
Yeshua.
In a greater order.
Mm-hmm. So they see all. Thank you, Curtis. Almost missed that one.
So the priest is there.
The priest is there.
But the great priest.
Yes. Melchizedek, the new priest.
Yes, Melchizedek, yes.
So you are standing, there's no judge, but Yahweh and the priest are there.
Oh, actually Melchizedek is a judge as well.
Yes.
Because
King.
the Father rendered it under his judgment under him.
King and priest. Yes, Trey.
So would it be fair to also say that you can falsely accuse somebody without saying a word?
Can you falsely accuse someone without saying a word? I would love to know an example of that one.
So we're also told that we're going to be judged based on things in our heart. You know, that if we do something within our heart, we've already committed that sin. Essentially, like, you know, so if I'm already committed to cheating on my wife in my heart, then I've already cheated. Essentially, even if I go through with the act or not.
That would be adultery. So,
yeah. Well, no, so what I'm saying for false accusing is that if someone comes up to you and they tell you something, and then you automatically, oh, that's such and such, that they're lying. Before they even tell you something, have you not already falsely accused them? Because inside of, even if you tell them you're not going to say that to their face because you're trying to be respectful. But if you don't believe someone off the jump from what they're saying, aren't you falsely accusing them of being a liar now? I think
hold on, before
Yeah.
I try to tackle the second part of that, the first part, to accuse someone is to say something to someone else.
Someone else, yes.
I'll be saying someone
Yeah,
else.
if you keep your mouth shut and you're thinking it, you haven't accused anyone.
And that's what I'm kind of getting at. I feel like I'm disagreeing with that part. Because you can accuse somebody in your heart, because
Well, you
from your
can
heart,
you
from
can
your,
accuse somebody in your heart, but you haven't falsely accused them to anyone else. And this is about being a false accuser and a slanderer.
Yeah, this is,
Slander.
but
Yeah.
you know what you just said before is about before the Father. He's what you said. If our mouth comes to the words of our heart, and our heart is already falsely accused, and we cannot have said something.
Yeah.
The Father already knows that we've already decided that we've already made our accusation on them.
So, and I'm going to try to explain this one from the perception of Yeshua and how he came to say that they were doing the law, but they needed to do it more in their heart. And so when he said, it said that you should not commit adultery. But I say, if you look upon a woman with lust, you've committed adultery in your heart. He's saying that, yes, they should take that next step in all of those examples he gave to not do it in their heart. So, yes, you should not in your heart falsely accuse someone, but that's between you and Yahweh.
Yeah.
This conversation is about you saying it to someone else and causing that person to look at another person in a different light. In both situations, you are before Yahweh doing these things. One will be a greater measure of accountability than the actual action that did not take place.
Okay.
Hopefully I explained that one, everybody got it. Okay. All right, where was I? Oh. You do not have to be before a priest or a judge to bear false witness. Yah sees all. And that's what we actually are missing, kind of the mark of understanding of what it means to be a false accuser or slanderer, in my opinion. Let me throw that in there. All of this is my opinion. Leviticus 19:16. Just one verse here. Leviticus 19:16 says, "Thou shalt not go up and down as a talebearer," or interpreted as slanderer, for that word talebearer, "among thy people. Neither shalt thou stand against the blood of thy neighbor. I am Yahweh." Yahweh told us specifically we should not be a slanderer or talebearer. We should not intentionally or unintentionally bear false witness, or falsely accuse or slander anyone. And the big question is why? Why, David, are you talking about this? Why is this so important that I keep my mouth shut when I don't know the truth of a matter? Why is it so important that I don't spread gossip when I don't know the truth of a matter? Why is it so important I don't go around trying to gain support on how I feel about another person?
Because by your words you will be judged.
Let's go to Revelations 21:8. It is, and it's more important, and it's, I guess, more severe than that. Yes, by every idle word you will be judged, but the actual conclusion of that judgment is death. Revelations 21:8 says, but the fearful, and these are talking about the people that are not in the kingdom, the fearful, the unbelieving, the abominable, the murderers, the whoremongers, the sorcerers, the idolaters, and all liars. All liars. It's interesting that it didn't say all fearful and all unbelievers and all things that are abominable and all murderers and all whoremongers. It didn't say all in front of anything else but liars. And that leads me to believe that there are different degrees of lies. And those different degrees of lies incorporate people that are false accusers or slanderers, and they don't even know that they're doing it. My opinion. But you guys, how I know, you know how I like to dig into words. Why did they put that all there? But the more important thing is, if you falsely accuse someone or if you slander them by saying something that is not true, even if you don't know whether it's true or not, you are still lying. It all boils down to you are lying. And I know we don't like to approach that subject because calling a person a liar nowadays is greatly offensive, but it is what it is. And if you are a liar, where will you not be? In the kingdom. Because all liars, and I'll continue to read. It says, all liars shall have their part in a lake which burns with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. All liars. Not just the ones that lie on purpose, but all liars. An example that I have here of all that slander and lie and bear false witness, let's go to Numbers 14:35. Numbers 14:35. And when I read this, I was like, ooh, Yahweh ain't playing. He is not playing with us. This is when they were in the wilderness or coming out of Egypt and supposedly going into the land. Yahweh told them, I'm going to give it to you. It's land of milk and honey. You will go in there and you will kick out all of the people that are there, and I am giving it to you because it's a promise of Abraham. But what did they do? Numbers 14:35. I, Yahweh, have said, I will surely do it until all this evil congregation that have gathered together against me in this wilderness, they shall be consumed and they shall die. And the men which Moses sent to search out the land, who returned and made all the congregation to murmur against me, they actually swayed the people against Yahweh for their particular cause because they were afraid. They gathered support around their cause and used Yahweh as the person to condemn. Can you imagine that?
They accused Yahweh of being a liar.
Yes. Falsely accused Yahweh and slandered him because they were afraid and gained support of the people. That is false accusation and slander on a much greater scale. But not only did they do it towards Yahweh, he goes on to say, they murmured against him by bringing up a slander upon the land. They also slandered the land. After Yahweh said how great it was and I was going to give it to you, they actually said, no, there are giants living there and they will devour us. And we look like ants. And What is wrong with you, man? Not only did you slander Yahweh, you slandered the land. In verse 37, even those men that did bring up the evil report upon the land died by the plagues before Yahweh. They died in the wilderness. And I know not just them, everybody above 20. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with, lies or false accusation, it's, you don't know the damage it will cost others.
Yes.
Right, like in that example, it cost them from being in the promised land. Right?
Yes.
So even though people might think it's minor, unintentional, how it affects other people, you don't know. An example would be if someone says the end of the world is this year, right, and people believe it, they start selling everything they have, then they become poor, or people who are, pregnant and, oh, I'm not gonna, all of that damage
Yes.
that is caused by that, you're gonna be held accountable for that.
Yes. The weight behind
The
them
weight behind
is
it.
destruction.
Exactly.
And they don't even understand or realize
Yeah.
that the idle words that are saying impact others immensely.
Immensely.
And then there's collateral damage, because in this case, not only the people that murmured, but the people that were like Caleb and Joseph, which those are the only two that really gave a good report, all of them, even if they were gung-ho, let's go get it, they died as well.
Joshua.
Yeah, Joshua. What did I say?
Joseph.
Joshua, sorry. Yeah, they were just like, wait, I didn't do nothing. Why am I dying in the wilderness? Should have kept your people in check. Yes.
It all lies is something. It's really deep because how many times do people just, Amy come to me and says, how do you like my soda? And I don't like it, but I don't want to hurt her feelings. I say, it's nice, Amy, I really like it, but I don't like it.
Yes.
That's a little nice
Yeah,
lie.
the white lie. Yeah.
But all
That is a
lies.
whole different study. But yes, all liars. Yeah, I'm gonna stay close to the false accuser and slander liars, because those are a whole different topic. But yes, you are correct. All liars, and that is the whole. There are degrees of lying. That's an opportunity for a study. If I don't make it to it, somebody might trump me on it, so that's okay. But yes, all degrees will be thrown in the lake of fire. That's why we should be purposeful and have, specific intentions around what we do and what we say. Let's go to Psalms 101:5. Psalms 101, verse 5. Just one verse here. Psalms 101:5 says, whoso privily slandereth his neighbor, him will I cut off. And this is just an affirmation that Yahweh ain't playing with us with this one.
Also a good point about, it's not in court what he's talking about. He's
No.
talking about private.
Just any slander. And he didn't say, he who slanders his neighbor before the priest and judge, I will cut off. He who does it, period, he will cut off. Him that hath an high look and a proud heart will I not suffer. The consequences are too dire to be guessing if we are right and wrong in a matter when it comes to saying something about someone that we have no idea whether it's true. And I'm talking to you guys, but I am in the same boat because I've done it. And I will say I've probably done it recently. But that is why I am studying whether I should or should not, because I'm going to about face on this. So all of these B-series stuff, they're on my list to about face and stop doing if I am doing it. So.
People think that it's not, like sometimes when we talk about stuff, we would say, oh, it's not a salvation issue, because we think it's minor.
Yes.
And it is a salvation
This is a
issue.
salvation, and that's the purpose of going through these, because we could look at these and we could be blinded by the adversary to think that it's not a salvation issue. It's not a big thing. It's just this idle thing. It's a little white lie. I'm not going to be held accountable for it. When in actuality, that is the total opposite. He wants you to think that so that you can glare over and glance over it and keep on doing what you're doing and not make the change that's needed to save your life. Because that's what it really is about. Do you want to lose your life over a minor idle word, or do you want to save your life because you saw it, recognized it, and decided not to do it anymore? Ephesians 4:29. Ephesians 4:29, you don't have to turn there. I've mentioned this verse many times. One verse here, Ephesians 4:29 says, "Let no corrupt communications proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good and to be used for edifying, that it may minister grace unto the hearer." The only thing you should say about people is something that is good, to lift up either them or the perception of them by others. Now, I know you're thinking, David, well, what if that person is bad? What if that person is evil? Then I say, why are you around them? Remove yourself from all appearances of evil. But what if they're a brother and they're evil? They're not really a brother in that case. If they are doing evil, you should tell them, address it with them, one-on-one. Don't bring anyone else in unless other people have seen the evil that they have worked. Address it with them. If they refuse to stop, you refuse to associate. Besides a high and by. Because we have to protect not only us, but Yahweh's perception, Yeshua's perception of us going forward. The best thing to do in that situation is to be silent if we're not sure about a matter. I think it was my mom, I can't remember, my mom or dad used to say, if you ain't got nothing good to say, don't say nothing at all. And we have to be continuously positive with each other. Proverbs 10:18 says, he that hideth hatred with lying lips, and he that uttereth a slander is a fool. And I really wanted to dive into that, but I really don't have the time. But imagine that. He that hideth his hatred through lying lips. There are people that are going to talk behind your back and smile in front of your face. That's called, yeah, hiding their hatred for you through lying lips, lying to your face, but talking behind your back. Now that I contribute that to like being punched by a bunch of people in a dark room, pitch black room. You don't know where it's coming from. You don't know when it's about to happen again, and you don't know who's doing it. All you know, you're just getting hit right and left. But there will be judgment for those that are doing that. But we should not participate in that. And I know I've mentioned earlier, but let's turn to Psalms 15:1. Psalms 15:1. I like this verse because, there's a lot in Psalms that I don't really know off the top of my head or by heart, but when I read it, I'm like, oh, that applies perfectly here. We think about who is going to be in Yahweh's tabernacle, who's going to be in his kingdom, who's going to dwell on his hill, his holy hill, and David explains it perfectly of who will and who will not. Psalms 15 verse 1 says, Yahweh, who shall abide in thy tabernacle? Who shall dwell in thy holy hill? He that walketh uprightly and worketh righteousness and speaketh the truth in his heart. Trey. I like that. That answers your question. Yeah. You have to speak the truth in your heart as well as out of your mouth. See, Scripture answered it. I don't need to answer it. That's perfect. Verse 3. He that backbiteth not with his tongue, meaning you can't be a backbiter, or that word is also interpreted as slander. He that slandereth not with his tongue, nor do evil to his neighbor, nor taketh up a reproach against his neighbor. Those won't be found in his holy hill. Verse 4, and whose eyes a vile person is despised, but he honoreth them that fear Yahweh. He that sweareth to his own hurt and chargeth not, he that putteth not out the money his money to usury, nor taketh reward against the innocent. He that doth these things shall never be moved. Those are the things we have to do in order to be in Yahweh's kingdom. And the closer we get to the end, the harder it's going to be to understand and identify these things as an attribute or trait of what not to do. And that is the purpose of, or that is the plan of the adversary. It's to blur and dilute the lines of what's good and what's bad. If he can blur and dilute and change what's good to bad and what's bad to good, and he's got all these people thinking they're righteous and doing the right thing when they're actually not, he's got them. And Yahweh will give them up to that delusion if they don't diligently search what is true. Yes, Amy.
Well, your discussion about this topic is interesting this time of year because Christmas is around the corner, and it's one of the biggest lies.
The biggest lies out
Yeah.
there. Yes.
Santa Claus, Jesus' birthday.
And all that comes with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was telling the story the other day as I was going to buy something. Matter of fact, it was the donuts that I bought today. And they tried to give me a box that had Santa Claus on it and Christmas on it. And I was like, you know what? I don't want that. I want a regular box. Go in the back and get me a regular box. And I stood there and waited until they did. Not participating in the lie. Remove ourselves from that lie. 2 Titus 3:1. I'm going to go really quick. 2 Titus 3:1. Just a couple of verses here. 2 Titus 3, verse 1. Titus. Oh, did I say Titus? Yeah. 2 Timothy. Thank you. I don't know why I put Titus down there. 2 Timothy 3, verse 1. 2 Timothy 3, verse 1. Thank you, David. This know also, that in the last days or the latter days, perilous times shall come, for men shall be lovers of themselves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection, truth breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce, despiser of those that are good, traitors, heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasure more than lovers of Elohim. All of this stuff is a part of the plan, and false accusers is one of those. And if we look at this list and say, oh, truth breakers, that's a liar. You tell somebody you're going to do something and you're not going to do it. That's a different variation of lying. False accuser, you're going to actually claim something that's not true with someone. Disobedient to parent, all of these things are a part of what we see in the world today. I mean, you can just basically turn on any TV and you'll see a show about many of these. And the show is not saying that these are bad. The show is saying that it's okay for you to do this. Or they're creating scenarios around it in TV shows to say that it's all right. And if anybody tells you that it's not okay, then that person is hating on you, or that person is trying to manipulate and control you so that they won't even turn to the truth. With false accusers and slanderers increasing in the latter days, we shouldn't just watch our behavior to ensure we are not one of them or one of those, but protecting ourselves from those who do this, removing ourselves from even the appearance of evil, guarding ourselves and guarding what we do with others. If everybody watches themselves in this situation or in being a false accuser or slanderer, and make sure that you stay away from others, then that we are more likely to get out of this. But if we're like, oh, I'm just going to work on me, or if the person says, you need to work on you and I have nothing to work on, then we're not actually helping one another to actually overcome this plan that the adversary has in place. Let's go to Psalms 41:4. I'm actually going to address this. So little did I know, and like I said, Psalms, I'm diving deeper into it to get a greater understanding about it, but I did not know that actually David had a prayer to Yahweh to help him with this type of situation. Psalms 41, verse 4. So if you are dealing with people that are slandering you or a false accuser, you can rely on this prayer to Yahweh. Psalms 41, 4 says, I said, Yahweh, be merciful unto me. Heal my soul, for I have sinned against thee. Mine enemies speak evil of me. When shall he die, is what they're saying, and his name perish? A slander, so to speak. And if he comes to see me, he speaks vanity, meaning smiling in my face and telling me good things, but behind my back, wishing I would die and wishing I would perish. This is what David was dealing with. He's also saying, his heart gathereth iniquity in itself. When he goeth abroad, he telleth. Smiling in my face, talking behind my back, and going out and telling everybody that will listen how much he hated David, or that person hated David. Verse 7, all that hate me whisper together against me. Against me do they devise my hurt. An evil disease, say they, cleaveth fast unto him. Now this is really funny. They despise David. They call him an evil disease, but they want to stay close to him. And I think about that. In this day and in this world, there are people that are going to see you, and they're not going to like you, and they don't even know why. And the solution to that is just don't deal with me. Don't even come around me. Don't be my friend. Don't talk to me if you don't like me. But their mindset is the opposite. They want to stay close to you, keep your enemies close type of scenario, so that they can disrupt you because they don't like you enough to not just to leave you alone. They don't like you so much that they want to disrupt your life as much as possible. That sounds like the adversary. It sounds like Satan. He hates humanity so much.
That's his description.
Yeah, that he won't leave us alone. He wants us to perish, just like him. But I'll continue on. Verse 9. I'll reread verse 8. An evil disease, they cleaveth fast unto him. And now that he lieth, he shall rise up no more. Yea, mine own familiar friends, in whom I trust, which did eat of my bread, have lifted up their heel against me. Not just strangers, not just acquaintances, but his close friends were also against him. And he's praying that Yahweh delivers him from this. Verse 10, but thou, O Yahweh, be merciful unto me, and raise me up, that I may repay them. By this I know that thou favorest me, because mine enemies does not triumph over me. And as for me, thou upholdest me in mine integrity, and setteth me before thy face forever. Blessed be Yahweh, the Elohim of Israel, from everlast to everlast. Amen. Even though strangers, families, friends may speak evil of you, keep silent and let Yahweh deal with it. And even though you might hear something and you want to repeat it and you want to say it, keep silent and let Yahweh deal with the matter. And even though someone might come to you trying to get you to support them about something, hey, this person did this to me and I didn't do nothing, and, you know, I'm the innocent person here, trying to get you to support and back them, say nothing and let Yahweh deal with it. Because if you're going to be judged by every idle word, it's best not to have an idle word to be judged by. Matthew 5:11, we're going to close out here. Matthew 5:11 says, blessed are ye when men shall revile you and persecute you, and shall say all manner of evil against you falsely for my sake. Rejoice and be exceeding glad. It doesn't say, hey, go out and find out a secret on them because they're slandering you, and you need to slander them and make false accusations against them. We do not render evil for evil. But it says, rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for great is your reward in heaven. For so persecuted they the prophets which were before you. So they're going to persecute us in Yeshua's name. It is our job to let Yahweh deal with it. So I say 1 Peter 2:1, we'll just close out with that, 1 Peter 2:1. Wherefore lay aside all malice, which is, malice is interpreted the desire to do evil. Lay that aside. We should not have a desire to do evil, meaning being a false accuser or slanderer on purpose. And it says, in all guile or cunningness to do evil. We should not be trying to craft a situation to where everybody's on our side, and in certain situations, slandering and making people have a lower perception of each other so that you can gain people on your side. Lay aside all hypocrisies and envies and all evil speakings or slanders, as newborn babes desire the sincere milk of the word, that you may grow thereby. So we got to set all of that aside so that we can be the new creation that Yahweh wants us to be. All right. Any questions or comments? Hopefully I didn't fall in a bear trap or step on the landmine on this one. But like I said, it's a deep discussion of reflection, and if we do not reflect on us and what we do, we will be caught off guard when the Master returns. Hallelujah. We will be back at 3 o'clock with Curtis Holland for the main message. Praise Yah.